how the Nazis brainwashed the German people to support the final solution. A concerted effort to indoctrinate the public into endorsing the Nazi leadership's extreme beliefs, especially the final solution, the extermination of the Jewish people, marked the growth of the Nazi regime in Germany in the 1930s and 1940s. In this video, we will go through 7 key points that illustrate how these strategies were employed to secure widespread complicity and support for their horrific agenda. Number 7. Propaganda control. The propaganda apparatus of the Nazi dictatorship was an intricate and widespread structure that permeated every sphere of German society. The Nazis created a thorough plan to manage the discourse surrounding their policies and beliefs under the leadership of Joseph Goebbels, Minister of Propaganda. This included the creation of state-run media organizations that censored any dissenting opinions and exclusively published pro-Nazi material. Books, periodicals, and newspapers were all strictly regulated. Any that did not support Nazi ideology were either outlawed or repurposed to further the objectives of the dictatorship. Additionally, the Nazis used film as a potent propaganda tool, creating films that portrayed Jews as a dangerous and inferior foe. Number 6. Censorship and deception. A key component of Nazi manipulation of public opinion was censorship, which gave the government the ability to mold narratives by silencing opposing voices and points of view. The government set up a system of censorship organizations to keep an eye on media, literature, and the arts for anything that would be considered offensive or at odds with Nazi philosophy. Intellectuals who disagreed with the regime faced prosecution or exile, and books that went against Nazi ideology were publicly burned. This effectively isolated residents from opposing viewpoints and critical thought by creating an echo chamber where only narratives sanctioned by the Nazis could thrive. Alongside censorship, the Nazis purposefully misled the public about their intentions toward Jews. Instead of framing anti-Jewish actions as acts of violence or discrimination, they presented them as essential for economic recovery or national security. Number 5. Public rallies and events. The Nazi approach for garnering support and strengthening Germans' sense of national unity relied heavily on public rallies. These were carefully planned spectacles intended to arouse strong feelings and strengthen allegiance to Adolf Hitler. Particularly, the Nuremberg rallies, which featured impressive military demonstrations, planned marches, and impassioned speeches by Hitler and other top leaders, came to symbolize Nazi propaganda. These rallies had an electrifying atmosphere, and attendees were urged to show their passion with chants, salutes, and other acts of devotion that gave them a sense of inclusion in the greater Nazi movement. Additionally, the rallies provided forums for anti-Semitic discourse. Jews were frequently used as scapegoats, as adversaries who threatened Germany's unity and power. Number 4. Education system manipulation. One of the most important components of Nazi indoctrination efforts to mold the values and views of future generations was the manipulation of the educational system. After seizing control of educational institutions, the regime promoted ideas of Aryan superiority and changed curricula to fit its racial beliefs, portraying Jews as inferior creatures deserving of neither respect nor citizenship. Textbooks were altered to contain anti-Semitic material that blamed Jews for moral decline, economic conflict, and societal decay. Only those who shared Nazi beliefs were permitted to teach children. Teachers who did not fit the mold were either fired or persecuted. This made sure that propaganda, not historical accuracy or critical thinking, shaped young minds. Additionally, by encouraging loyalty to Hitler through exercises meant to develop discipline and obedience, young organizations like the Hitler Young significantly contributed to the indoctrination of children outside of formal educational settings. Number 3. Use of simple slogans. Simple phrases were skillfully employed by the Nazis as effective means of indoctrination and mass communication across their government. These slogans were designed to be emotionally impactful and easily remembered, which made it possible to condense difficult ideological ideas into short words that the general population could simply repeat. Ein Volk, Ein Reich, Ein Führer, one people, one empire, one leader, for example, promoted unity under Hitler's rule while bolstering Germans' sense of pride in their country and sense of shared identity. Phrases like, "The Jew is our misery," which directly blamed Jews for Germany's social and economic issues and framed them as social foes, were among the other slogans that specifically targeted Jews. Their themes were reaffirmed until they were embedded in the public mind by the use of these slogans repeatedly in speeches given at rallies, posters displayed across towns, and radio broadcasts. Number 2. Terror and intimidation. In order to keep the German people under control and quell opposition to Nazi policies, terror was a crucial tactic. With extensive authority to keep a close eye on citizens' activities, the Gestapo secret police used informants in local areas to report any indications of opposition or divergent views regarding the regime's treatment of Jews or other oppressed groups. Public acts of violence against political dissidents were glaring reminders of what would happen if they opposed the dictatorship. Many were arrested without charge or detained in concentration camps on false pretenses intended to silence them for good. Open criticism and sympathy for oppressed groups, such the Jews, were discouraged by this widespread climate of dread. Common Germans soon discovered that voicing opposition may put their personal safety or means of subsistence in danger. Because so many individuals preferred complicity or silence to risky confrontation, Nazi policies, including those directed against Jews, were able to continue with little protest from citizens who felt helpless against an authoritarian government prepared to employ violence against its own citizens. Number 1. Incremental policy implementation. In order to desensitize German society to increasingly radical measures without inciting widespread outrage or resistance among citizens who might otherwise oppose such actions if presented all at once as extreme measures against Jews or other targeted groups within society, the Nazis implemented their anti-Jewish policies gradually over time. Early measures included boycotts of Jewish-owned businesses in 1933 and laws such as the Nuremberg Laws 1935, which denied Jews citizenship rights and prohibited them from working in a variety of professions. These actions were presented by the government as necessary measures to revitalize the country following Germany's alleged humiliation in the defeat of World War I, rather than as outright discrimination against a whole population based only on religion or ethnicity. This in-depth analysis demonstrates how Nazis used a variety of tactics to successfully brainwash a large number of Germans into endorsing or, at the very least, putting up with horrible acts committed against Jews during this troubling period in history. Thanks for watching our video and don't forget to subscribe.